I want to tell you a story about a lady that I knew. One day, she sat in her car outside her house for 45 minutes with the engine off and her hands still on the steering wheel. She just told herself she needed a moment before going inside to her family, but the truth really was right there beneath the surface. She just could not make herself get out of the car and walk into the home because her life felt like it was no longer hers. Her marriage, it wasn't a catastrophe. There was no screaming, no betrayal. There wasn't a really dramatic breaking point. It was just this quiet, slow erosion of the connection and the joy that she and her husband once felt. This dull ache of living beside someone instead of with someone. She told herself it was normal, that every marriage goes through seasons. She said to herself, everybody has rough patches. Yet, night after night, she found herself sitting those extra minutes in her car in the driveway with the same heaviness pressing against her chest. As she stared at the porch light, thinking about going into the home, a single thought rose into her mind with uncomfortable clarity. She knew she couldn't keep living this way. Not really because the whole thing was burning down, but because she wasn't lighting up. Nothing about her life made her light up. And there is a particular kind of loneliness that exists inside of a life that looks fine from the outside, but is dull from the inside. In that moment, she told me she felt the difference between the chaos and the clarity. Chaos shouts at you. Clarity whispers. Chaos demands dramatic decisions. Clarity asks you to tell it the truth. She had been waiting for something explosive to happen, something to justify leaving the marriage. But nothing really happened. Reinvention doesn't really happen in the crisis. It begins in the stillness. It begins in the clarity when you finally stop lying to yourself about what actually hurts. My friend knew she had to separate a bad week from a bad life. Am I just having a bad week, or am I having a bad life? A normal slump from a pattern. A solvable problem from a structural failure. When she laid out the truth in front of her, the distinction was clear. It was not exhaustion from a season. It was exhaustion from carrying a life that fit a woman that she used to be, not the woman she became, and certainly not the woman she wanted to be. The marriage might not have been broken, but their alignment was broken. And for the first time, in that moment of clarity, she allowed herself to imagine the possibility of what reinvention might be with an honest path forward. Not built on anger or blame or crisis, but on self-respect, clarity, and willingness to choose a life that did not require her to be numb when she drove home. She eventually got out of her car and walked inside her house, but something in her had shifted where she no longer was waiting for the chaos to give her a justification to stop these feelings and have another move. The clarity is what gave her the permission to take those next steps. You don't need a crisis to start over. You only need the courage to tell yourself the truth. I believe that personal reinvention is one of the bravest moves that any of us can make. I believe that reinvention is not a reaction to pain. It is actually a response to admitting the truth to yourself. I believe that when you outgrow a life, It doesn't mean that you failed at your life. It means that you evolved into something new and different. And I believe that you are allowed to pursue a life that fits the person you are now, not the person that you were. I have 5 lessons for you today. Lesson 1, tell yourself the truth privately first. Reinvention of yourself starts with honesty between you and yourself, kind of the me, myself, and I type thing. You have to admit to yourself what feels misaligned, what have I outgrown, and what am I pretending not to know? What do I know, but I'm pretending I don't? In those private moments, you have to stop performing. That is the birthplace of the transformation. Reclaim your inner authority in order to build your new identity from the inside outward. The identity crisis of being fine. How many of us just tell ourselves we're fine? You have to have resilience and loyalty to yourself to let your truth be your guide. Lesson 2, separate crisis from clarity. Most people confuse a bad moment with a bad life. They over-dramatize the bad thing that happens in a crisis and make the crisis look bigger than the overall picture. Clarity is going to tell you whether the problem of the crisis is a solvable problem or a systemic pattern. Crisis is a spike of emotion. It spikes up. In a crisis, you scan for threats, you look at what's next. The pain may be real, but your perspective in a crisis is distorted. In crisis, you are looking for protection. With clarity, clarity is the vision. It's the quiet moment after the storm, after the crisis has gone, where you survey the damage. You separate the event from the pattern. And clarity is where you make the choices. Lesson 3, stabilize the essentials. Before you can make any major moves, once you have your clarity in place, you have to stabilize the essentials, your finances, your identity vision, your support system. You cannot make life-altering decisions in an emotional freefall. You need to anchor yourself in your sleep, your hydration, and decide what your non-negotiables are. That's going to soften your panic in the transition and the reinvention. And stabilizing the essentials creates this foundational line for you that you can then build on in your reinvention. Lesson 4, create your future identity. What is the thing that you want? If you know for sure this isn't it, then what is it that you want? Ask who you are becoming. You may need to have some solitude for this. I think a lot of times we interrupt ourselves with noise, with so much noise. There's noise everywhere. We have the radio on all the time. We have the TV on all the time. And you can't hardly even hear yourself think. So to think of what this future identity is that you want to create, you may have to intentionally create some solitude. You may have to take a weekend and go stay at a hotel by yourself so that you have time and ability and space to think. Ask who you are becoming. Ask what that version of you believes, tolerates, refuses, or expects. Then make your decisions align with that future identity, not the past one. This step right here is the core of reinvention. If you don't like where you've been and you want to be somewhere different, this is what separates fantasy from a reality of a new life. It's the becoming, the potential. You stop performing the things that were false and you align everything with what you want to be. And once you decide who that future identity is, then you run all the decisions through the filter of what she would do once you become her, not what your past person would do. because that's going to be the alignment that makes all the difference in becoming the new you and leaving the old you behind. Lesson 5, make one decisive move. Reinvention begins with one step, one boundary, one conversation, one plan, one declaration, and then you can build your momentum from there. Most people stay stuck where they're at, living this life of blah, being fine, but not great. They think that a grand gesture is required, some dramatic thing is required to change their life, but really, quiet, deliberate action, just one move to break that inertia to become something different. That's what will build the momentum to actually achieve that new person that you want to be. The next move comes after that. And the next move comes after that. And the action gives you the confidence, which gives you the courage to keep going. If you are standing at this precipice, this edge of personal reinvention, know this: you are not breaking your life. You're not breaking it. You are rebuilding your alignment. The life that fits you in your future is one brave step away from where you're at now. You don't need a crisis to start over. You only need the courage to tell yourself the truth that fine is not enough, that you deserve to live a life that lights you up. And if you're not living that, then get a plan for how to reinvent whatever the situation is, your marriage, your business, your personal life, your relationships, whatever that is, to reinvent it from being fine to being a life that lights you up.